Now, interestingly, I'll be quite clear here. I am absolutely committed to the idea that in this country you are free to protest. I'm probably more passionate about it than a number of other things, because I think that is democracy. It's the heart of what we do. But when I then find out that because people who break the law during their demonstrations, which is just something I can't tolerate, I don't think is right, we taxpayers pick up the bill. That presents a bit of a dilemma, doesn't it? Because why should I, the taxpayer, pick up the bill for someone who's breaking the law effectively during exercising their right to protest? But that right, of course, does not include breaking the law. Interesting. Well, I think it is anyway. So Baroness Jenny Jones, Green Party member of the House of Lords, at the heart of democracy. Some might say other words in the House of Lords, but I think they've got a valuable role to play. Baroness Jenny Jones, welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning. Look, there is a bit of a dilemma here, I think, don't you? Because I suspect you are as pro right to demonstrate as me. But I do actually think that Insulate Britain basically have landed us with a bill of something like 4.1 million for policing costs when they were breaking the law. That doesn't seem right either. Where do you stand on this?
Well, first of all, what I came on here to talk about was a bill that's going through Parliament that's absolutely horrendous. And I'm sure if you were still an MP, you would vote against it because it does suppress our rights. On the issue of Insulate Britain and our paying the bill for their court appearances and that sort of thing, we have always done that for people who have broken the law. We have always done that if we feel that they have a right to representation. And of course they do. Now, Insulate Britain annoyed a lot of people, but they actually do have a right to demonstrate. They were actually demonstrating about something that the government should have been doing. But if you move away from that, the bill that I'm complaining about and fighting...
Jenny, we'll come back to the bill. I'm happy to come back to the bill. But they were breaking the law. You can't block motorways.
The suffragettes broke the law.
Well, I think that's a different argument.
I'm sorry, it's different. Why is it different?
Because your first argument was that it's their right to process, and you were implying that it's fair we spent money on people who break the law, such as their defence. But I don't think it's fair that if someone's going to block a motorway, which is illegal, I should have to pick up the bill for that policing.
And I made the point that we've always done that, because if somebody is a burglar but they still have a right to representation in court, we pay for it. It's always been so.
But it's not about their representation in court. The policing costs, let me read them to you. We're talking about some of the costs.
I know the policing costs. What I'm saying to you is
what about
this has always been true.
Okay.
And you presumably supported the tanker drivers when they fought the fuel price rises under the Blair government. You would probably have supported them. They broke the law as well. And we probably still paid an awful lot. We probably paid for the policing and all the rest. And so you can't pick out one set of protests that break the law as opposed to all the other protests that break the law.
Well, I wouldn't do that. No, I haven't done that. You're putting words in my mouth, actually. And I think you're going back to about 2001. Jenny, I just think, look, I don't think you're really addressing the rule. What I'm getting from you is you think it's okay to break the law and we should pick up the bill during a protest. I think it's okay to protest, and I accept that sometimes you have to have policing walking alongside these demonstrations, but I don't think it's right if they're going out there and deliberately breaking the law. It's wrong, surely, that we should pick up the bill. Why don't we punish people who break the law rather than send them to jail, which is just kind of almost giving them succor and publicity, and say, here's the bill for the policing that you've caused by breaking the law?
Look, either you've invited me on here to talk about what you said I was going to talk about.
Well, I will. I'm happy to, but just answer that last question.
Repeating yourself. The point is one that I have already answered, and that is that protests often break the law. That's the nature of protest, because it's the one way that they can get publicity. Now, if you want to move on, I'm happy to stay, but otherwise, why waste my time, your time, and your listeners' time?
Well, Jenny, I do think, look, I'm happy to talk about the bill, and I'm going to give you great airtime on that, and I'm happy to move on, but you haven't answered the question, in fairness.
I have.
So you support breaking the law?
That we as the public sometimes always pick up the bill for protest. Protests aren't always the sort of protests I would support. I mentioned the tanker drivers because it is very much a protest I wouldn't support it, but I support their right to make that protest and for us to pay for the policing for it. That's
Okay,
a democratic
Jenny,
society, and crushing dissent.
Democratic society is not about a parliamentarian coming on and saying, I support breaking the law. I just don't believe that.
I just can't believe you're going over this again. Look, protest is an integral part of our democratic processes, and particularly when you have a government that's got an 80-plus majority in the House of Lords. Now,
so it's an anti-Tory
in the House of Commons. Sorry, you don't have a majority in the House of Lords.
It's an anti-Tory thing, then. It's okay to break the law.
What? No, you're twisting my words. Nick, I'm going to stop this interview if you keep on doing that. And if you don't move on, you invited me on here to talk about a policing bill that's going through Parliament. If you don't want to talk about it, I'm happy to go.
Jenny,
I've got other things to do.
Jenny, that isn't what we invited you on to talk about. Actually, I was listening to the call. We invited you on to talk about the choice between protest and taxpayers. So if you want to talk about the bill...
In that case, I support the protest. Thank you, Nick.
An absolute pleasure as always, Jenny. All the best to you. And that's the problem, isn't it? You've got a parliamentarian coming on who wants to break the law, who's meant to be a lawmaker, seems to want to do it because it's breaking a law protesting against a Conservative government, was invited, and I'll defend our production team to the hilt there, mainly because I was sitting there, was invited to come on and talk about precisely what I was talking about, and then cuts and runs. Oh, well, make of that what you will.